I'd like to welcome everybody to the last meeting of the Special Election Committee. And I want to start out with, we do have a quorum, that I would especially have special thanks to my committee. Karen, when I was asked to be the chair, I said, well, who am I going to appoint to the committee? And Karen recommended all of you, and I'm so glad I listened to her, because everybody did an outstanding job the whole time, especially yesterday. And we were definitely inundated. And so I would like to thank every member of this committee. I've got Shauna and Merle and Luann, Ann, and Mr. Marshall down there.
The rose among thorns.
Yes. And I want to thank, I underestimated, I'm thinking like the recall, we had 500 people through, and that was manageable. I wasn't expecting close to 2,000. So I would like to thank Jack Fisher for calling in the cavalry and bringing in the torch people. We had Jack Fisher, Bob Campbell, Bob Wilson, Peg Martinez, and Donna Lester. They did a fantastic job and were a great help. And then, top of the list is Katie and her crew. They did a great job during the run up to yesterday. I mean, the website was great. All the candidate videos and bios posted, everything, and things ran pretty smoothly. And I also want to thank, even though she's not here today, Karen Ripken. We couldn't have done all of this without Karen's help for this committee. So I think we're all relieved it's over, and hopefully we won't have 8 candidates in the future.
I don't know, I thought it was good that we had
8,
Yeah,
but I
I
mean,
thought
it got a little crazy. So, moving on to our agenda. So, we didn't have any minutes from our February meeting because that's where we worked on the questions for the candidates. And now we have some revisions for the petitioner and candidate packets. I didn't see anything that needed to be changed in the petitioner. Does anybody on the committee have any recommendations for that? Okay. The candidate packet, I think we have some issues. I've written down, we're going to be writing a report to give to the governing board, and I'll work on like a draft and send it out to everybody to review and add what you want, and then we'll finalize it. We'll send it off to the governing board. But a couple things I had, currently in the candidate packet, there does not appear to be any recourse if somebody violates the rules. So we do need to add something. And, we don't have really any power, but my suggestion might be that at least write them a letter or an email telling the first time, you have violated. I know several candidates were had workers going door to door, and if nobody was home, they were leaving materials. And that's a no-no because if someone's a snowbird and they're not there, or it's like the gardeners who leave the stuff on the steps, it just gets blown away and people get rather upset about that. So we have to come up with some suggestion for that. Bulletin boards at the golf course. Some candidates were very upset that they dropped off flyers to be put in there and they weren't put. So my suggestion, just rule out, since it is rec center property, not to have any candidate materials and put up at the bowling alley, at the golf courses.
Or would that include at any? Would that include at any Sun City West property?
It should be.
Then I don't think we should specify golf courses. I think we should just say
Property.
any Sun City West property. Or on Sun City West property.
Actually, I believe that's what it already says.
Yeah, but they allowed it during the recall. And so Karen, when people were calling her, she says, well, if they did it during the recall, it was okay, but I didn't think it should be. And we did have a incident at one of the golf courses where they had put up 2 candidates, a third had dropped off her materials, and mysteriously they couldn't find the key to put up her materials. So, and then all of a sudden, because one of the governing board members was there, and she mentioned it to the staff person, they went and mysteriously found the key. So that has to be addressed. Another is in Article 3, owner member election meetings, under 3.09, absentee ballots. Even the state of Arizona or Maricopa County uses the term absentee ballots anymore. You either vote by mail or you vote in person. There are, accommodations for those that are handicapped and so forth, but that term absentee ballot, it really should say homebound, or we could come up with a different term. But these are people who don't have a computer, failing eyesight, they don't have transportation to get there like yesterday, and they have to be accommodated for, so we have to come up with a different term. But because we were getting calls from people who were saying, oh, I'm going to be on vacation and I want to vote. Well, are we going to accommodate them or not? Because I don't know too many places in this country where you can't get on the internet and vote. Maybe it's a little prejudice for me because I'm high tech, but I think that especially the people I saw that were on the homebound list, I'm going, they're members of the Boomers Club. I see them out there dancing all the time, so they're not homebound. So I really think that's something that we have to come up with, and then it be part of one of our recommendations to the governing board to change that section. Bylaw changes depending on how much is done, depends whether it has to go to the membership or not. So anybody have any other things they want added to our list for changes to the candidate packet?
Roberta, there's,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of holdovers in here from when we had paper ballots or even the Maricopa County ballots as well. I think there's a lot in here that is holdover from before some of the laws have changed, or it just straight out tries to state the law when maybe we just need to use pointers back to the law, back to Title 33, to avoid being out of date when that happens. And so I would propose maybe a overhaul of this whole thing, and then send it to the lawyer to make sure we're in compliance with things like absentee and with some of the staff assignments. Make sure those those staff are aware of those assignments, and that we're not violating anything with homebound or anything like that. So I don't know if you want to have a work committee assigned, or if you want staff to just do its overhaul and provide it back to you, or if you've got a time frame on this.
We can always, email. Also, we could do a Zoom meeting if we had to. So one of the issues that came up, and because of threats on Facebook, we did hire security for the forum. Actually, it was for the meet and greet, and also for yesterday. And I guess my fault, I violated governing board policy. Well, actually, rec center policy. And on how we're supposed to go about hiring security and getting their documentation for insurance and so forth. So that's some of the procedures I sort of overlooked. So and we should, the next time we have whoever's chair of the committee, that's one issue that should be paid attention to. One thing, Katie, I wanted to ask you, do we allow voting by phone? Like a WhatsApp or something like that?
Yeah, it is voting by phone. They still need to get a hold of their actual code. There's a code on the emails they get. So that is something I want to talk to you about. If they're homebound, they have that special code. If the absentee, like we did, so they could get a emailed ballot that has that special code. It has the phone number in that ballot. They can call, give their rec card number and that special code. And I think we had 19 people that took advantage of that. So we just need to advertise it better, make people aware of it. But they do have to have the ability to get the email or to at least talk to the committee member who can then give them the code. So we would have to figure out the logistics if you want to have them go through you if they don't have email capabilities.
I think that's something that we should advertise. If we had 19 people use it, while that's a very small number of voters, that's still something that we need to make people aware of. And those who say they're going to be out of town or for whatever reason, I think we need to let people know that's an option. And it wasn't advertised, so I think if it had been advertised, we might have gotten more people taking advantage of that.
The homebound ones that I talked to that weren't necessarily homebound but were on cruises, they said they had no phone service, no internet. They wouldn't have been able to either get the email or make the phone call, so it wouldn't have been a solution for the ones that I did talk to.
Yeah, we did have 26 ballots that were homebound, and they were all done over the phone. And I'm the one who entered them into the system. Katie gave me the spreadsheet with their code number, and I put them in. Couple of questions came up over the period. I understand that Maricopa County used to do the election.
Yeah, long ago when we had paper ballots, we had the option of using Maricopa County. They chose that option, so it cost at least $5,000 to have them print the ballots. That was the majority of the cost, and they would bring their Eagle machines out here and almost run it like a county election. So yes.
How does that compare to the cost of doing it in-house? Because we are hiring an outside vendor to do the
Right.
counting.
I mean, the printing of the ballots was like $5 back, and this was 10 years ago, plus the machines, plus the personnel to run it. And so the cost was about, at the end, $7,000 or $8,000. So 10 years ago, cost was equal to our current cost. I don't think they have an all email option, if that was something we wanted to do. If we wanted to go to all paper ballot, we could consider going back to them, but.
I cringe at paper. So. All right,
I
do
think
we,
I think there needs to be a, information, distributed about the vendor. I had several people say, what are we doing sending our votes out of district? So maybe an article or two, just to explain how that all works, and, would be helpful.
yeah, I had several people ask me if I was in charge of the vendor, and I said, no, that was Katie's department, and they cringed. I said, well, she's got the expertise and her staff does, I don't.
The use of the third party provides that independence that we need. I have to be involved because the export from our database and the use of TEI to get the database of who can vote to them is involves IT. But then once it's in their hands, I can't see who votes or any of that kind of stuff. That's why we use a third party.
Roberta? I think it would also be helpful to let people know why we cut the online voting off at 3 PM on the Thursday before the Monday. As I was told, and I gave out this information, I hope I wasn't wrong, but because we're using a third-party vendor, they need a work day, which was Friday, to clear out all the rec center numbers of the people who have voted. Is that correct? So that then when on Monday, if you've already voted, your number would not show up for you to come in and vote in person?
So there's two pieces of software involved in this. One is our membership database, and one is the vendors database. And so when the deadline to register to vote, and register just simply means that you're an owner member in good standing, and we have an email address on file for you. Once that deadline hits, I take an export and I send it to the vendor and say, here's all the qualified vendors or qualified voters that are eligible to vote, and he creates his own interface on his software. And then if they have an email, he sends them that invitation to vote, blah, blah, blah. At the end of early voting, he cuts it off, and then he sends me back an export that just shows if they voted or didn't vote. I do not see any results. I send that to our membership software vendor. They import it in, and you see a checkbox of yes, they voted, or no, they didn't vote. Again, I see no results. You guys who worked the polls saw that same little checkbox. Yes is all it says, or voted. So then when they come in the polls on election day, they can't vote twice. You know, if they've early voted and they show up, and we would have no other record because, again, I don't see the results of the vendor software. That's our check and balance that they haven't already voted. When they used Maricopa County, if you early voted, and this was more than a decade ago, you requested a homebound or early ballot, you were given a paper ballot, you signed for it. If you lost it, if you forgot to send it in, if your spouse tore it up, you were done. If you turned it in and then you got in line to vote in person, there was no check and balance from what I understand. So this is a very secure system. And again, staff is not working those machines that check people in. So we are as far hands off as we can possibly be.
Thank you. But we do need that extra time between when the early voting is cut off and the voting goes on at the library. There is extra time needed for things to happen on the back end.
Yeah, it's those two vendors are involved. So the one vendor has to send the list to us. I have to send that off to the membership vendor, who has to have time to import it in and mark the ones that have voted.
Okay.
So that is the one day, because I don't know what their schedule is in Canada.
Right. And now I had a lot of people think that, you know, well, they still should have been able to vote at home even on Monday.
Yeah.
And I told them that just couldn't happen.
Yeah, there's got to be some cutoff to give them time to respond and get them imported. And, you know, because their schedule varies, you know, we just give them a whole day to get it done just in case something comes up. They're not available. It's a Canadian holiday. Who knows?
Thank you.
As we all know, there's a move on to eliminate mail-in voting in Arizona. And yesterday was a real good example what could happen if that's the case, because we were overwhelmed, and how they're going to do that, how they're going to vote or count them all. That's a real good example of what could really happen.
Since 80% of the population in Arizona votes by mail, I doubt if they're going to get rid of it. There's an attempt, but I don't think they'll get very far. That's what they want, chaos, people lining up for hours and hours and getting frustrated and not voting. Not going to work. So one of the questions that Nick Turner, who is one of the candidates, he did send me an email last night because he couldn't be here. He did have a couple questions, like we had advertised in the candidate packet that the candidates at the forum would have 5 minutes. And then it was changed to 3 for their introductory speech. But we had to adjust the time because we had 8 candidates. If we had had just 3 or 4, then the time would have been much less. With 8 candidates, if we gave everybody 5 minutes, that's 40 minutes of the forum. So we did reduce it, and I think the candidates did fine at adjusting to it, and we did give them plenty of notice that we had changed it. Nick also brought up some things about there's all sorts of comments in the candidates packet of where they can distribute their leaflets and everything and meet with people, but there's nothing about non-candidates. And because we had an incident this election with a flyer being put out by a non-candidate and the controversy, I'm just going to tell the rec center that the governing board, that they might want to look at policy L05 and who and how everything gets distributed. Because right now, candidates have to come through us, and they go, it was sent to Karen. She would send me the candidate stuff. I would read through it and say yay or nay or what change had to be made. But there's nothing that prevents anybody from standing out on the street and passing out things, and especially on rec center property. So that might be something the governing board has to look at.
Roberta, on those lines, with anything that is approved through the governing board office or the committee in terms of petitioning or having a table or any of that, if it can kind of be explicit in the election packet that management and frontline staff be informed as soon as possible, that 48 hours or whatever, that someone's going to be at this location at this time.
Okay.
Because there was a lot of times we were caught off guard and we were making a lot of calls at the last minute to figure it out.
That'd be good. We'll add that to our list. Do we have any other topics? Luann?
I have a few things just that we might consider. One, whoever is committee chair will hate me for. But I think, we had candidate training in January after folks had turned in their petitions. I really think that we need to have I'm calling it a class, a session here in the lecture hall, for example, on applying for becoming a candidate for board members, to let them know the misconceptions about what the true responsibilities and duties of a board member. People just don't realize what it is exactly. So I think we need to have something in October for anyone that's interested, or for anyone that's interested in running, about what it is to become a board member, to sit on the board, how to petition, what is expected. I think we put the cart after the horse rather than the horse in front of the cart, because I think people need to know about how to go about petitioning before they get the packets. In that case, the Special Elections Committee would need to start meeting in July rather than September. But I do believe that we need, and former board members, I believe there is a session about becoming a board member, a training. I believe Sue Fitzsimmons, didn't she start a session?
She did one.
Yeah, and it might be something like that to find out what was covered in that and have something in October. I think it would be valuable. Another thing that I would like to see, and many, many people mentioned it, is even if we don't have an election, that we still have a forum, regardless of whether we have an election or not, because folks still want to know who's going to be sitting on the board. They still want a background so that we have the forum. Maybe we don't need two, but I believe that we should still have it. I think that we didn't, now maybe we didn't have enough time. I don't think we took advantage of our radio program. There's so much that we could covered in our radio program, just like I was saying about the session here, to have a little question and answer session about misconceptions of the role and of the board members. This would be something that, again, would be in October. For example, about the vendor, how that works. So maybe have a little spot on the radio to share various aspects. And, people complain about, well, I didn't know about this, I didn't know about that. And I always say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I mean, we advertised. I mean, I was shocked when somebody said something about how the length of the line yesterday was unacceptable and that the system didn't work. And I said, well, some people just didn't want to vote online. And they said, online? The rec center didn't tell us you could vote online. Some things you just can't fix, though. But, if we had it on radio, you can only do so much. And again, Roberta, I think it's essential that we add the steps concerning violation. I think it must be written out. For example, they get a warning, but then by the third time they do something, then the community is told that they're not operating under the rules. So I do think we need specific steps, and that's something that would probably have to be put in the bylaws rather than just put in the candidate's packet. This is kind of the recall. Either it's tied in with the policies concerning the election, but we must have guidelines in writing on how a recall. I hope to goodness we never have another one. That's just my personal opinion. But should that happen, we need it in writing because there needs to be guidelines on that also, not just for the general elections.
'Cause there is a policy with the recall.
I think there's some things that can be covered. I think it needs to be reviewed. And I think that's about all, not to say I won't think of something in another minute. But that's all for now.
Roberta, can I reply to a couple of those? Is it all right?
Yeah.
So just a reminder, we do have videos from previous board members about what it's like to serve as a board member. So we could do something similarly, or just here's the process, here's debunking rumors. Anything like that you want as a pre-planned video with informational graphics that stands alone. We could run it whenever, all the time, or have it just sitting out there. So we can do that with Martin at any time. And then also on the recall, most things are exactly the same other than the time frame, and the other major differences, at least from my world, are all dictated by state law. So the time frame changes a lot of things. So anything that we would want to change policy-wise, we just need to make sure it complies with that 30-day timeline and what that entails. The only other thing is we start at 9 o'clock and end at 3 o'clock, I think.
That was another thing I thought about. I would have actually liked to have seen voting open yesterday morning at 9 o'clock for a couple of reasons. Just because we were slammed, but we still would have been slammed even if it had opened at 9. But also, we were very lucky yesterday with the weather, but we might not always be that lucky. And by 10 o'clock, it can be a lot hotter than it can be at 9. So I would like to see the doors open at 9.
First of all, I echo a lot of the thoughts Luann had. As far as the violations, I think we need to get something in writing for that pertaining to the candidates and, start with a verbal warning, maybe a written warning. And if the third time, I'd say they're no longer a candidate. I mean, we need to make it hit them, make them realize that this is serious stuff. Also, the thing on the radio was really good, and the videos that were done. Something else we might want to do is have current board members or people who ran and were not successful, maybe do a little blurb, I don't know, on the Rec Center News or on the radio or whatever, of what I wish I'd known before I ran, because that might help other candidates, tell them the things they know. Anything we can get in the Rec Center News in the fall, talking about the process and vendors. I know it's like Luann said, you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink. Well, you can put it in the paper, but that doesn't mean they're going to read it. Doesn't mean they're going to remember it. But anything we can do. And I just want to give a thank you to all the 8 people who ran this year, because I think it's great when we have that many show up. The ones who were not successful, I hope that doesn't keep them from trying again, because we've seen people who didn't make it the first time, but they come back and they run again. Hopefully they've learned enough from their experience that they will want to run again. But it is the democratic process. I have served on the board. I was one of those, along with Roberta, who didn't have to go through forums, but I wouldn't have minded if I had. There were only 3 of us that year, but I think people probably wanted to know who the heck we were. And that would be a good way to tell people. So I think there are a lot of things we can learn from not only the successful candidates, but also the people who maybe were not successful. But I hope they're going to come back and try again, because we all win when we have a lot of choices, and that's what we had this year.
Thank you, Ann. Also, I encourage that all the people who ran and were not successful, if you have never served on a committee, this would be a good time to put your name in to be on a committee. I know, talking to Dory yesterday, she was disappointed she didn't win, but she said, I'm going to get myself on a committee. So I think encourage all the people who did not succeed to at least do that. Keep involved.
I have a concern voiced. They asked me to bring it up here today. There's several people in town that have 1 email and 2 people. There's no way to solve that.
So again, it all comes down to that unique code and getting it to those vendors. So if there's a way to come up with a process to have them come in, validate themselves, and get them that code and make sure it's secure, and if they lose it, it creates a less secure system, more accusations of fraud. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm open to suggestions. You could always direct mail it to them, but then the spouse gets it and votes it for them, and then you're back where you started. So definitely open to suggestions on that. The phone number thing works, but they still got to come in and get that code somehow.
They have to come in person?
I don't know what the process is.
Okay.
Somehow they got to get that code, and getting it to them needs to be secure. With the
Sure.
email, the email and the password for the email is your security. So,
I understand, and I don't want us to put ourselves at risk for any kind of voter fraud.
yeah, and the minute you offer the paper, we'll send it to your home. Now everybody wants that, even if they're going to vote by email, and now your costs go up. So I'm open to ideas. I don't have the answer to that.
Do we have any other comments? Merle?
Yes, I would suggest that next year, SurveyMonkey be considered earlier and maybe be positioned so that it ends before the committee gets together for to develop the questions. There was quite a bit of repetition, but I also think that that repetition represents maybe what's really on the community's mind. So I think that could be valuable. And I was also wondering if we could do something with the meet and greet. We talked about this briefly, but there's a lot of people left before the candidates spoke. And I felt that some of the candidates really had a different perspective the second time they spoke as opposed to the forum. And I wonder if there's some way that those could be, and I know there's some limitations, Katie, I think at the social hall, but I was wondering if there was some way that those could maybe be like recorded in the afternoon and just be played over there for the people who were interested in staying, or then others could see it online, maybe on YouTube. Just a thought. I don't know how it would work out, but.
I mean, if you move it to Palm Ridge, we have filming capability there. It's when we go to the social hall, we got to move all the equipment over there. It becomes more difficult.
So even just to project something that had been pre-recorded?
Oh, if it's pre-recorded, you're just showing it over in the social hall?
Right.
Yeah.
I wondered, like, maybe if they could record it in the afternoon or something and then just show it over there for those who wanted to stay, but then also put it on YouTube for those who chose to go home.
Yeah, any of that's possible. Sure.
Thank you.
I believe the reason that we decided to have the speeches for them to meet and greet for a while before they gave their speeches was because if something came up during their meet and greet with the residents that they might want to address in their speech. So I think that offers, so I like the idea of having the speech a little bit later, but a lot of people commented that they wish that we had also recorded the speeches and put them online on the website. And I think that would probably be easy enough to do, provided we were in this proper space.
When you also had 8 candidates, and if you have 4, you may not be in that same boat. So it may just depend. Whatever it is we decide, we just need to do it early. And I think as you go through some of these dates, even the candidate photos, that needs to be pushed earlier if we're going to hit the February Rec Center News. We were really late on those photos. So I don't know when we need to get together, go through those dates, decide what you want to have based on how many candidates we think we're going to have, and then get on Martin's schedule, and we can do kind of whatever you want.
Anybody
people-
else have any comment?
Those people that left got their answers. That's why they came. So, you go back to the horse getting water again. That's why they came early, and that's why they got their answers.
And they do have a recorded stump speech that maybe it's redundant. They've already had that opportunity. It's on YouTube. They were in the hundreds of views. So obviously people were watching those. Maybe we don't need the introductory. Maybe we just point people back to YouTube for those intros. I do have a community comment whenever you do get to those. I have a comment on YouTube from the community whenever you do get to those.
I did notice yesterday that several people, when they were voting, were pulling up the candidate biographies and looking at those or looking at the YouTube. They had to get headphones to listen to what was being said on the YouTube, but a lot of people did that because then they couldn't figure out how to get back to their ballot. And so we had to help them with that. But still, they were still looking at that information, and I'm glad that we had that information available for each candidate on the ballot.
Okay, this is a suggestion from Scott Oblander, 139839. In yesterday's election, there were 8 candidates. The highest vote getter only achieved approximately 42% of the votes cast. This seems to have occurred due to having 8 candidates in 3 positions. For future elections, I would like to see a ranked choice voting system used. This would require changing the bylaws.
Well, one of the issues we had is we did have a lot of people come in and they only voted on the transportation issue. they did not vote for the candidates. They came in, they said, I said, you would take them down on the ballot. Okay, it's where you select your candidates, and they go, no, I don't know anybody. And I say, okay, then you go down at the bottom and review how you voted and so forth. So that has a lot to do with the disparity in numbers also, is because of people only voting for question one.
Do we know how many people only voted for the parking issue and did not vote for candidates? Is that information available, or is that even?
It's available. I don't know it offhand, but I want to say maybe 500 difference on who voted on question one.
So
Total
that's
numbers.
5%.
Yeah, I think that.
That's not significant, I don't think, in an election. It wouldn't have. I don't
No, I think his point was that of the people that voted for the directors, the first place person only got 49%. And so, and it was due to having 8 candidates. So if you were doing rank, my first choice, my second, third, whether that's the direction you want to go or not, we just need to run all of that by the attorney, and any other changes that you want to make, especially with sanctions on candidates not following the rules. Just all of that needs to go by the attorney.
And it might be good that if they don't know anybody and don't want to vote, that's good. If you push it and then they just start marking, I don't think that's good.
Any other comments? Sean?
I noticed with a number of people who said they did not know anyone on there and had no interest in voting for people, they were very, very uncomfortable. And I said, you don't need to be. If you don't wish to vote, you don't have to. Well, I've just never done anything. I've never been a participant. I don't know these people. I don't want to know them. And I said, that's perfectly all right. But some of them were very, very uncomfortable with not being able to. But yet the fact is that they had not made any effort to get acquainted and find out who these people were. But it's kind of sad.
There's that horse again.
Yeah, but they did know about the parking issue. I think Riley's staff and Katie's did a good job of getting the information out about on the Facebook, Rec Center News, everything about, and making it very specific and easy for people to understand what the ballot question was. And because everybody was coming in and said, I got to vote yes, I got to vote yes. So they did a good job. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other comments? If not,
I have one thing.
all right. Yes, ma'am?
I just want to say thank you to Roberta for her outstanding leadership throughout this time. And thank you to the fantastic team members on this committee. It was really an enjoyable experience. And of course, thanks to Katie and all the Sun City West crew who did a fantastic issue. We didn't have to worry about any IT, and we've got our guys sitting up there recording, and George yesterday. It was fun seeing him smile as we took swipes at Katie. Oh, you weren't in the room when we were doing that. But they were nice swipes. And of course, to Karen, I mean, this woman amazes me with the amount of knowledge that she has from bylaws, parliamentary procedure. I mean, she is really an amazing asset in this community. And then, of course, thank you very much to all of our candidates.
Thank you, Luann. Anything else? Then I will adjourn this meeting. And like I said, I will get a draft out, and you can add your own comments and everything, and then we'll hash it out and make our recommendations to the governing board. We are adjourned.
You gonna send